Award-winning Canadian actor Donald Sutherland is being remembered for his remarkable career following his death at the age of 88. In a career that spanned 7 decades, Sutherland rose to fame after starring in The Dirty Dozen in 1967. Sporting a distinctive look and voice, he switched between character and leading man roles, known for offbeat characters like irreverent Army Sergeant Hawkeye Pierce in the film MASH.
He has been mashed.
Heard from your wife?
Sutherland starred in more than 150 roles across his career, receiving many accolades for his work, including 2 Golden Globes, 1 Emmy and an Academy Award for Lifetime Achievement. His acting credits include Don't Look Now and JFK, with one of his most iconic roles remembered as a hippie tank commander in Kelly's Heroes.
It's still up. No, it ain't.
More recently, Sutherland was introduced to a new generation of fans through his work as antagonist President Snow in the Hunger Games series.
I've been watching you, and you watching me. I'm afraid we've both been played for fools.
Sutherland's son Kiefer has paid tribute, saying he believes his father was one of the most important actors in the history of film, who was never daunted by a role, good, bad or ugly. Film critic Jason Dooso is the host of The Screen Show on ABC RN. He joins us now in the studio. Jason, what was your reaction to this news?
It's such a sad loss because he was a brilliant actor and Kiefer got it right. I mean, I think the likes of De Niro and Pacino would gladly sit at his feet to just get a bit of his magic. He was a filmmaker who had a wonderful, varied career. He could play a leading man, he could play an antagonist, he could play an anti-hero, and he hits Hollywood just at the right time because after The Dirty Dozen, he'd been working in Britain mostly, and he heads to Hollywood as the old system is crumbling, as the Western world is in social upheaval after the events of 1968 in particular, and a new kind of cinema is ushered in, a more intellectual cinema, a cinema that demands the kind of screen presence he has, which is, you know, psychologically very complex. We're making films that are more paranoid. We're making films that are skeptical of power. He suits all of that. And he also has a kind of, he can be rascally, as we saw there, but he also has an aloofness that's almost aristocratic in other roles. Perhaps in the Hunger Games, a lot of people will recognise that element of him there. And, you know, he just went from strength to strength, making films like MASH, as you mentioned, playing as Casanova for Fellini, you know, an Italian director. Must have been a difficult role, an Italian director synonymous with exploring sexuality, the dark side of male sexuality, difficult role. And it's interesting, had he been born maybe 30 years earlier, he would have remained a character actor, but he really suited the times. He wasn't a handsome man, but he could have a real erotic charge, a dark glamour. And he could also be a really nasty piece of work. A brilliant, brilliant actor.
Yeah, he's been described as a shape-shifting movie star, which is pretty apt in this case.
Absolutely, shape-shifting, so many dimensions to him, and it fit with a kind of, especially auteurist cinema that emerged in the 70s, which was so important, working with the likes of Nicholas Roeg on Don't Look Now, the remake of Invasion of the Body Snatchers. I mean, so many great films. Clute, opposite Jane Fonda, of course, he had a relationship with her for a time. Very political as well, away from the cameras. So he was, I think, a man of the time that then managed to, I mean, the quality was just so evident that subsequent generations of filmmakers also called upon him. Fred Skepsey, the Australian director, of course, worked with him on 6 Degrees of Separation. He was just the best, what can I say? As a screen actor, I think the best. And
such a long career, so it's so much to discuss. But with the later role in the Hunger Games, that gave him a whole new legion, a whole new generation of fans, didn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there are many people who can, and I'm sure that new legion of fans would have been surprised at just how slippery and sinister he could be beneath the surface that, as I said earlier, was almost had an aristocratic kind of poise to him. So a wonderful character there. And yeah, his longevity was, I think, a testament to the fact that he was greatly skilled as an actor, but also that he had that multidimensionality. Had he been just a pretty boy with just a couple of dimensions, he might not have had much to offer as he aged, but he aged so interestingly. And I think it's the sign of just, I mean, he had the raw material, but of course he had also the talent and the skill the nous for choosing a good role, I think. So.
We've heard the tribute from his famous son, Kiefer Sutherland. He's described it as a life well lived. He was never without work in an industry that he loved. Jason, do you think he was recognised enough for his roles that he played?
I mean, I think the people who matter recognised him. Of course, famously, he didn't get an Academy Award for any particular role, but that just serves to illustrate the inanity, really, of the award system and awards like the Academy Awards. I think he knew he was very much beloved and he was critically acclaimed. So perhaps he didn't get some of those glossy accolades, but that wouldn't have been his style anyway. I'm sure he didn't go to the grave, you know, and unfortunately he has now, but I'm sure he didn't go to the grave thinking, you know, he regretted never getting that kind of Oscar.
Yeah. And this comes, I mean, he was set to publish his memoir called Made Up But Still True later this year.
Well, I hope it's still coming, you know,
well,
clearly.
I hope so too, because there's a lot to say. I mean, so many roles, as you've mentioned there, but also, you know, as a child, he cheated death. He thought he was going to become an engineer at one point and became an actor, and then this
a sickly
career.
child. It seems like having a sickly childhood can sometimes really benefit, right?
Yeah.
In terms of, I think it teaches you what it's like to sort of be alone and apart, and you observe things, and maybe you live in your imagination a little bit. Look, I can't wait to read that memoir.
Yeah.
I mean, he really lived through some tumultuous times. He took some interesting and important political stances. He, you know, was mixing with the right people and the important people making the great cinematic art. And right to the end, he was working at the top.
Amazing body work and an amazing life. Jason, thanks for coming in.
You're most welcome.